The first sound was not laughter. It was the sound of apatment in the middle of a Berlin storm. One after another, rolling through dirty rainwater beneath the yellow lights of an empty market street, while a young woman stood frozen beside a collapsed fruit cart, staring at the old farmer lying motionless on the ground. No one moved. No one helped. And somewhere beyond the narrow alleys of the city, hidden under the cold shadow of the German Alps, a secret tied to the rarest fruit harvest in Europe was already beginning to destroy lives. Like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for more stories. Berlin never slept quietly. Even at 4 in the morning, the city breathed like a tired animal. Tram cables hissed overhead. Rainwater crawled through the gutters. Neon signs flickered over old buildings blackened by decades of winter smoke. And deep inside the crowded Markthalle Noon Market District, where fruit sellers prepared their stalls before sunrise, Lena Hartmann moved through the narrow aisles carrying wooden crates heavier than her thin shoulders should have allowed. She was 32 years old, but exhaustion had carved older years into her face. Her dark green jacket was soaked from rain. Mud stained the knees of her jeans. Her hands were rough from work that never truly ended. But people remembered her eyes. Cold when necessary. Kind when possible. The kind of eyes soldiers carried after returning home. Few people inside the market knew the truth about her past. Years earlier, Lena had served as a combat medic with the German armed forces in Afghanistan. She had spent nights dragging wounded soldiers through dust storms while helicopters burned in the distance. She had watched young men die calling for their mothers. She had learned how silence sounded after explosions. Berlin was supposed to be her escape. Instead, it became The camera would follow her footsteps through the dim market corridor, as workers shouted prices across stacks of pears, cherries, blueberries, and figs imported from every corner of Europe. Steam rose from coffee stands. Trucks backed into loading zones with violent mechanical groans. Rain hammered against the glass ceiling overhead. Lena placed another crate onto a vendor table before stopping briefly to stretch her aching back. Across from her stood Otto Weiss. 70 years old. White beard. Heavy coat. A fruit farmer from southern Bavaria, who arrived in Berlin every autumn with produce harvested from small alpine orchards passed through his family for generations. People trusted Otto. Not because he smiled often, but because he never lied. His apples tasted different from anything sold in supermarkets. His strawberries carried the sweetness of mountain air. And his rare golden pears had become famous among Berlin chefs willing to pay absurd prices for authenticity. But this year, Otto looked afraid. Lena noticed it immediately. His hands shook while unloading wooden boxes. His breathing felt uneven. And every few minutes, his eyes drifted toward the entrance of the market, as if he expected someone terrible to arrive. "You should rest," Lena finally told him. Otto forced a weak smile. "Rest comes later." The old man's voice sounded thin, like paper tearing. Lena opened one of the crates and paused. Inside rested dozens of deep crimson apples unlike anything she had ever seen before. Their skin almost looked painted. Perfect. Too perfect. Otto quickly shut the lid. Not for display yet. That sentence stayed with her. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Fear. Real fear. The storm outside intensified. Lightning flashed behind the market windows. Then came the collapse. Otto stumbled backward. A crate slipped from his hands. Apples exploded across the pavement. And the old farmer hit the ground hard enough to silence the entire corridor. The camera would drop low beside Lena as she rushed toward him, knees smashing against wet stone. Years of military instinct returned instantly. Pulse check. Breathing. Position. Crowd control. Call an ambulance, she shouted. But Otto grabbed her wrist with terrifying strength. His fingers trembled violently. His eyes locked onto hers. And then he whispered something that would change her life forever. They know about the orchard. Lena frowned. What orchard? But Otto was already fading. Rainwater blew sideways through the open market doors while paramedics rushed in carrying equipment bags. Vendors stepped backward in silence. Somewhere nearby, a child began crying. Otto survived. Barely. By sunrise, he was inside a Berlin hospital under observation. And Lena should have gone home. She should have forgotten the strange words of a frightened old man. But soldiers carried a dangerous weakness. They noticed patterns. And Otto's fear felt too familiar. 3 days later, Lena visited him. The hospital room smelled of disinfectant and stale air. Machines beeped softly beside the bed. Snow had begun falling outside Berlin, turning the city pale and distant. Otto looked smaller now. Fragile. But his mind remained sharp. You shouldn't be here, he told her quietly. Lena pulled a chair closer. You asked for me. The old farmer stared toward the window for several long seconds. Then he finally spoke. In Bavaria, near the Alps, my family protects something. The camera would slowly move toward Otto's tired face, while winter light cut across the room. A fruit orchard older than the war. Older than Germany itself. Trees planted by monks hiding from famine centuries ago. Lena remained silent. Otto continued. The fruits growing there cannot survive anywhere else. The mountain soil, the water, the cold air, it created something rare. His breathing grew heavier. Large corporations discovered it. Now the pieces began fitting together. Berlin restaurants. Luxury buyers. Sudden attention. Money. Otto looked at her again. They want the land. Lena crossed her arms. Then sell it. Otto almost laughed. No, that single word carried generations of pain. These orchards fed villages during the Second World War. Families survived because of those trees. Soldiers passed through those mountains starving. My mother traded fruit for medicine. He swallowed slowly. They are trying to force us out. Lena finally understood the fear. This was not business. This was invasion. Otto reached beneath the blanket and handed her a folded photograph. An old image. Faded edges. Snow-covered mountains. And standing beside rows of fruit trees was a young woman wearing a military coat. Lena stared carefully. She looks familiar. Otto nodded. Your mother. Everything inside has stopped. The room became silent except for the heart monitor. Lena looked again. Her mother had died years earlier. She had never spoken about Bavaria. Never mentioned orchards. Never mentioned Otto. She worked there after the war in Kosovo, Otto whispered. She saved my wife's life. Lena could barely breathe. The camera would slowly circle around her as memories collided violently inside her mind. Childhood dinners. Her mother's silence. The strange old photographs hidden in drawers. The unexplained sadness that lived permanently behind her mother's smile. Otto closed his eyes briefly. She promised the orchard would survive. Lena stood slowly. What exactly do you want from me? The old man opened his eyes again. Go there. Outside, snow fell harder over Berlin. And somewhere far south beyond frozen forests and mountain roads, an alpine orchard waited beneath winter skies. 2 days later, Lena boarded a train heading toward Bavaria. The journey south felt endless. The camera would track beside the train windows as Berlin's industrial skyline slowly disappeared into stretches of white countryside. Villages passed quietly beneath snowfall. Forests thickened. Mountains began rising in the distance like sleeping giants. Lena sat alone. Military backpack beside her seat. Hands folded tightly. Her reflection stared back from the glass. Tired. Guarded. And uncertain. She hated uncertainty. War had taught her one brutal lesson. Confusion killed people. By evening, she reached the small Bavarian town of Garmisch-Partenkirchen. Cold alpine wind hit her immediately. Everything smelled cleaner there. Pine trees. Snow. Wood smoke. The town looked beautiful from a distance. But beauty often hid desperation. Otto's farm rested several kilometers outside the village near steep mountain slopes. The road leading there twisted through frozen forests under fading orange light. Lena drove an old pickup truck provided by one of Otto's workers. No music. No conversation. Only the sound of tires crushing snow. Then she saw the orchard. Hundreds of trees stretched across the valley beneath towering alpine cliffs. Even during winter, the place felt alive. Protective nets covered sections of the fields. Wooden barns stood against the mountainside. Small lights glowed warmly from farmhouse windows. And for the first time in years, Lena felt something unexpected. Peace. But peace never lasted long. A woman emerged from the farmhouse carrying a lantern. Tall. Brown hair tied tightly. Heavy boots. Weathered hands. Her name was Emilia Weiss. Otto's granddaughter. She looked at Lena cautiously. You came. Lena stepped from the truck. I almost didn't. Emilia nodded once. That would have been smarter. The farmhouse interior glowed with warm yellow light. Old wooden walls creaked softly in the winter wind. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, while maps and paperwork covered the kitchen table. Emilia poured coffee silently. Lena noticed a rifle resting beside the door. Not decorative. Recently cleaned. Who's threatening you? Lena asked. Emilia slid several documents across the table. Property offers. Corporate acquisition notices. Legal warnings. And photographs. Men watching the orchard from parked vehicles. Destroyed fences. Dead livestock. Lena's expression hardened. This isn't pressure, she said quietly. It's intimidation. Emilia met her eyes. It's escalating. The camera would slowly move toward the kitchen window where darkness swallowed the snowy valley outside. 3 weeks ago, Emilia whispered, someone poisoned half our northern trees. Lena looked up sharply. And the police? Emilia laughed bitterly. The companies donate too much money around here. Silence settled heavily between them. Then Lena noticed something hanging above the fireplace. A military medal. German Armed Forces Medical Service. Her own division. She stood slowly. That belonged to my mother. Emilia nodded. She left it here. Lena walked closer. The medal looked untouched by time. And suddenly her mother no longer felt distant. She felt present. Watching. The storm outside intensified during the night. Wind screamed across the mountains. Snow battered the farmhouse windows. Lena couldn't sleep. Years of deployment had permanently damaged that ability. So she walked outside alone. The orchard stretched endlessly beneath moonlight. Frozen branches swayed softly. The camera would follow her boots crunching through deep snow while cold air drifted around her face. Then she noticed tire tracks. Fresh, Near the northern fence. Lena crouched carefully. Military habits again. Observation. Distance. Direction. Someone had visited recently. Very recently. A faint engine sound echoed somewhere beyond the trees. She turned instantly. Headlights flashed briefly between forest pines. Then disappeared. Lena returned to the farmhouse quickly. Someone's out there. Emilia grabbed the rifle without hesitation. Fear disappeared from her face. Only determination remained. The two women stepped into the storm together. Wind roared violently across the valley. Snow reduced visibility to almost nothing. But Lena moved calmly. Carefully. Every step controlled. The same way she once crossed dangerous roads in combat zones. Then they found it. A section of fencing cut open. Fresh footprints leading deeper into the orchard. And hanging from one of the trees was a dead golden pear. Split open with a knife. A warning. Emilia's breathing trembled. They've never come this close before. Lena studied the darkness ahead. Somewhere beyond the storm, hidden among the mountains, someone was watching them. And for the first time since leaving the military, Lena felt the old sensation returning. The feeling that danger was no longer approaching. It had already arrived. The mountains became silent before violence. That was the first thing Lena noticed. No birds. No wind through the trees. No distant machinery from nearby farms. Only the frozen stillness of the Alpine Valley, as dawn slowly crawled over the orchard like pale smoke. And standing beside the cut fence line, Lena realized something far worse than intimidation had entered their lives. Someone had tested the perimeter. Someone was preparing for war. Like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for more stories. Morning light spread across the mountains in cold shades of blue and silver. Frost covered every branch inside the orchard. The camera would glide slowly above the valley, revealing endless rows of fruit trees resting beneath snow, while tiny farmhouse lights flickered below like isolated outposts. But beneath that beauty,